I walked into the living room expecting Victoria to be reading one of her endless reports. Instead, she was standing by the window, arms crossed, staring at the skyline like she was deciding the fate of a company. I smiled nervously. "Hey, Vic, how was your day?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. She didn't look at me. "Caleb, we need to talk." My stomach sank. The tone wasn't playful or annoyed. It was deliberate, sharp, calculated. "What about?" I tried to joke, but it died on my lips. She turned slowly, her eyes cold, unreadable. "Us. Our marriage." I laughed nervously, hoping it was a bad joke. "Us? Everything's fine. You're running your company. I'm handling my projects. I want a divorce," she interrupted. Her voice was calm, almost clinical, like she was discussing quarterly earnings. I froze. "What?" I said I want a divorce, Caleb. I dropped onto the couch, trying to process her words. "Why? Did I do something? Is this sudden?" "No, it's been coming for a while. I think we both know it." Her eyes didn't waver. "I'm prepared to offer you $50 million as a settlement. Sign the papers, and this ends cleanly." $50 million. My mind couldn't process it. My heart couldn't process her cold, indifferent tone. I felt a sick mix of anger and disbelief. $50 million? You think money fixes this? You're divorcing me, Vic, and you think a check is going to. She held up her hand, silencing me. "I'm not here to argue. I've made my decision. You can either accept or fight, but know that dragging this out won't change anything. I want this done professionally. I want us both free." I laughed bitterly, standing up. "Free? You call this freedom? You're the one pulling the rug out from under me. We had a life, Victoria." "I know exactly what we had," she replied calmly. "And I've realized I don't want it anymore. We're incompatible, Caleb. I don't need excuses, and I don't need drama. This is practical." I stared at her, feeling my throat tighten. "Practical? You're divorcing me after 5 years because it's practical? And the money, is that supposed to make me feel better? I'm giving you everything I can. $50 million is more than most people could dream of. Take it, and you'll have the freedom to rebuild your life. Refuse, and this could get messy. I'm prepared for either scenario." Silence filled the room. My hands shook slightly, but I tried to steady my voice. "Do you even care, Vic? Was any of it real?" Her gaze softened just for a moment, but it disappeared instantly. "I cared enough to be honest. That's more than most could handle. Don't mistake honesty for love. I've already made peace with this. You should too." I sank back into the couch, numb. Betrayal washed over me, freezing my thoughts. "I can't believe this. I thought we were happy. I thought you loved me. I did in my way. But people change. Priorities change. Life changes. You need to accept it." I wanted to scream, to argue, to beg, but my voice felt useless. My mind raced, wondering if I had failed somewhere. Did I ignore signs? Did I miss her unhappiness? Did she ever love me at all? "I'll sign," I said finally, voice hollow. "I'll take the $50 million. Just end it." She nodded, satisfaction barely hiding in her expression. "Smart choice. I'll have the papers ready tomorrow. You'll be financially secure, and I'll be free. We both get what we want." I watched her leave the room with her usual elegance, the sound of her heels echoing like a verdict. I was left alone with the weight of disbelief pressing on my chest. My life had just been rewritten, and not by my hand. I was rich, but shattered. The world outside the window seemed sharper, colder. I realized something terrifying. I had no idea what came next, and for the first time, I didn't know who I was anymore. I thought signing the papers would bring relief, but the emptiness hit me like a punch. The house felt too big, the silence too loud. Every call I made ended in awkward small talk or long pauses. Friends I once trusted seemed distant, avoiding my eyes when we met. "Caleb, you've been quiet lately," Nate said when we met at our usual coffee spot. His brow was furrowed, and he stirred his cappuccino absent-mindedly. "I'm fine," I muttered, but even I didn't believe it. "You're not. You got money, sure, but this isn't about money, is it?" Nate's voice was calm, grounding. "Victoria's not done, Caleb. I can see it in the way she moves. She always wants the upper hand." I laughed bitterly. "Upper hand? Nate, she left me. She gave me $50 million. Isn't that the end?" "No, that's the beginning," he said. "Trust me, she's a CEO. This isn't just about you. It's about control, image, reputation. She doesn't play fair." I leaned back, gripping my mug. I thought I knew her. I trusted her. We had plans. 5 years, Nate. 5 years of life, of love, or what I thought was love, and she just walks away. Nate looked at me, steady. People change, Caleb, but some don't leave quietly. Watch her moves. Observe. You'll see what I mean soon enough. I wanted to argue, to say she would never stoop that low, but deep down I knew Nate was right. The next day, I attended a business gala with mutual friends. Victoria floated through the room with the ease of someone untouchable. I noticed how she smiled at certain people, subtly influencing conversations, steering attention. She didn't acknowledge me, not once. Her presence was a reminder of what I had lost. Hey, Caleb, a colleague said, avoiding eye contact. Heard about the settlement. That's quite a package. Yeah, I muttered. Quite a package. Their smiles were tight, almost sympathetic, but I felt humiliated instead. I remembered the night we first celebrated her promotion. She had laughed like her success was mine too. We had danced, carefree, unaware of the walls we would eventually build around ourselves. Those memories burn now, painful against the reality of her coldness. Nate's words kept echoing in my mind. She's not done. What does she want next? I couldn't figure out her motive. Was it to ruin me socially, professionally, or was it just to prove something to herself? Caleb, you're staring at her like she owes you an explanation, Nate said, following my gaze. She does, I said, voice low. She does owe me something. 5 years, that's not nothing. That's life, Nate. And she walked away like it was disposable. Nate shook his head. You can't control her actions. You can only control yours. Don't let her win by making you miserable. Observe, plan, and protect yourself. Learn before acting. I nodded, but anger bubbled beneath the surface. The gala ended, and I left feeling more exposed than ever. Victoria's laughter lingered in my mind as she talked with friends, her influence slipping into conversations like a shadow. The world suddenly seemed sharper, the social network I trusted turned precarious. At home, I poured a glass of whiskey and sat by the window, watching the city lights blur together. Memories of our trips, our dinners, our quiet mornings pressed against my chest. I whispered to the empty room. Was it ever real? Or was I blind? Nate was right. She wasn't done. I felt both rage and fascination. I needed to understand her motives, but I also feared what I might discover. Every smile she shared, every word she spoke to others, felt like a calculated move. The woman I loved, or thought I loved, was now a mystery, one I had to unravel carefully. The first bite of reality was bitter, sharp, and unavoidable. The money couldn't soothe it. Pride and humiliation warred inside me, and I realized that the next step wasn't just surviving emotionally. I had to observe, learn, and prepare for what came next. Victoria had left, but the war hadn't started. It was only waiting for the first move. I couldn't stop thinking about Victoria, her coldness, her precision, the way she dismantled our life like it was nothing. I needed answers, even if they were painful. I started looking into her business moves, scrolling through reports and press releases, trying to figure out what drove her. Nate, I don't understand, I said over the phone. She's making decisions that hurt her company, yet she's smiling in the media. How is that possible? Caleb, don't overthink her public image, Nate replied. Victoria's always about control. She wants people to follow her cues, even when it seems risky. She thrives on power, not just profit. I sighed. I thought I knew her. 5 years, Nate. I thought we were partners, equals. Was any of that real? You'll get your answer eventually. But be careful. Some truths aren't easy to swallow, he warned. The next day, I met Isabella Reed, a former executive who had resigned abruptly. She had agreed to speak with me under strict confidentiality. I found her in a small cafe, fidgeting with her coffee cup. Caleb Morrison? She asked cautiously. Yes. Thank you for meeting me, Izzy, I said. I need to understand her. Why she did this. Izzy looked around, lowering her voice. Victoria always wants control. She doesn't just lead. She maneuvers people like pieces on a chessboard. If someone challenges her or slows her down, she removes them quietly. She's been doing it for years. I leaned forward. So this, leaving me, offering the money, it's just part of her pattern? Exactly. She isolates people, makes them dependent, and then pulls the strings. I saw it with employees, partners, even friends. You weren't lucky enough to notice the signs because you loved her. The word stung, but I nodded. So it wasn't about love, It was about control. About winning. Winning, Izzy repeated, nodding. And she doesn't lose. You need to be careful. If you act without a plan, she'll exploit it. I left the cafe feeling both enlightened and enraged. Knowledge gave me power, but also made my blood boil. I needed a strategy, but I couldn't act recklessly. A few days later, I encountered Michael Summers, Victoria's new business partner. He was charming, polished, the kind of man who smiled while hiding his teeth. "Caleb Morrison," he said, extending his hand. "I hear you're making some changes too." "Interesting." I shook it reluctantly. "Michael, I didn't expect to see you here." "I like to stay informed," he said smoothly. "Victoria's circle is dynamic. People come, people go. I'm just another player in her world." I narrowed my eyes. "And your ethics?" "You follow her because it's convenient." He chuckled. "Convenient is one word. Loyal is another. I choose both. But don't read too much into me, Caleb. Focus on yourself." "She always does." I felt a rush of anger. These people, these allies of hers, were extensions of Victoria's reach. Everyone was part of her game, and I had been a pawn too long. Back at my apartment, I poured whiskey into a glass, staring at the amber liquid. I wanted revenge, wanted to confront her publicly, expose her. But a part of me hesitated. Acting out of anger could ruin me faster than her. I thought about loyalty, trust, pride. I had trusted her completely, and it had cost me everything. I whispered to myself, "So this is who she is. Power, control, manipulation. I see you now, Victoria. I see the moves you've made." The desire to strike back burned inside me, but I knew I had to be strategic. Impulsiveness had already cost me my peace. I had to gather evidence, understand her patterns, and pick my moment carefully. Every word, every action had to count. I thought about the past 5 years, the life we built, the dreams we shared. They were gone, but not meaningless. They were lessons, a roadmap to understanding her motives and protecting myself. I finished the whiskey, my hands still shaking slightly. "I won't be a pawn anymore," I said firmly. "I need to watch, wait, and plan. And when the time comes, she'll regret underestimating me." The room felt colder than before, but for the first time, I felt clarity. Rage and desire for revenge intertwined, forming a resolve I hadn't felt in months. Victoria had her empire, her allies, her control, but I had something she hadn't counted on: focus, determination, and a man who refused to break quietly. I couldn't stay passive anymore. Watching Victoria float through life, untouched by her own destruction, was unbearable. Nate had warned me to be cautious, but I knew that doing nothing meant accepting her control. "Caleb, are you sure about this?" Nate asked when I called him that morning. His voice was measured, steady. "I have to," I said firmly. "She's untouchable publicly, but privately everyone has cracks. You don't want to cross ethical lines," he cautioned. "We're talking about a dangerous woman." "I know," I said. "That's why I'll be careful. Subtle. I have contacts in the media. Enough to plan a story about her questionable business deals. Nothing illegal, just enough to create doubt. Careful, Caleb. One wrong move, and she'll destroy you instead," Nate replied. "I won't let that happen. I've been patient, and I've learned her patterns. It's time she realizes I'm not just a victim." By the afternoon, I had drafted the leaks and shared them anonymously. My heart raced as I pressed send. The thought of Victoria discovering it thrilled and terrified me simultaneously. Later that evening, I received a message from her. "Caleb, can we talk?" My stomach tightened. I knew she had noticed. When I arrived at her office, she was leaning against the window, composed as ever. "I see you've been busy," she said calmly. "I should have expected something." "You knew?" I asked, my voice sharper than intended. "I always know," she replied, turning to face me fully. Her eyes were icy. "You think this is clever. Subtle. But I anticipated it. I've had these leaks under control for months. You're just reinforcing a narrative I allowed to surface." I felt my anger spike. "So nothing affects you. You plan this." She smiled faintly. "You're learning. Revenge isn't as simple as you think. You act, I adapt. You react, I control. That's always been the way." I clenched my fists. "I won't let you manipulate me anymore." "Manipulate you?" she said, tilting her head. "Caleb, I never manipulated you. I simply acted with clarity. You're the one blinded by trust and love." I leaned closer, my voice low. "This isn't just about love. It's about betrayal. You betrayed me, and I won't let it slide quietly." Her expression didn't waver. And I never expected you to. But consider this a lesson. Revenge is rarely clean. It comes with consequences you haven't accounted for. I exhaled slowly, realizing she was right. Even as I plotted my moves, I had underestimated the complexity of retaliation. Rage burned, but so did a cautious understanding. She was formidable, clever, and calculating. I had to match that, not just react blindly. After leaving her office, I called Nate. She knew everything. I admitted. Every leak, every move. I feel powerless. Not powerless, Caleb. Informed, Nate corrected. Now you know what you're dealing with. That's advantage. You can plan better next time. I ran my hand over my face. It's exhausting. Every action I take has 10 consequences I didn't anticipate. I thought revenge would feel satisfying. Instead, it's terrifying. Good, Nate said. That means you're thinking. You're learning. Keep that focus. Don't let anger blind you. I spent the rest of the night reviewing her recent business patterns, her public statements, and media appearances. Every smile, every handshake, every minor decision was calculated. She was always one step ahead. My desire for revenge collided with the reality of her intelligence and foresight. By the early hours, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and stared at the city lights. I whispered to the empty apartment. I want to break you, Victoria, but I have to be smart. Patience, Caleb. Don't rush. One wrong step, and it'll all fall apart. The first strike hadn't toppled her, but it had changed something in me. I felt alive, alert, and dangerous in a way I hadn't before. I realized that taking action, even subtly, was both a test and a lesson. Victoria was a storm, but I was beginning to learn how to navigate it without getting destroyed. For the first time since the divorce, I felt a spark of control. Not full control, but enough to know that this battle had begun, and I was no longer just a passive observer. I realized quickly that I couldn't face Victoria alone. Every move I made, she had anticipated. Every subtle strike I attempted only reminded me of her control. Nate's warnings echoed in my mind. I needed someone who knew her world from the inside. Rachel Adams? I asked when she agreed to meet at a quiet cafe. She smiled faintly, tension in her shoulders. Yes, Victoria's former assistant. I know her better than most. Then you understand why I need help, I said. She's impossible to predict, and I need someone I can trust. I've seen her manipulate people for years, Rachel replied, lowering her voice. She's brilliant, but ruthless. You're lucky you've already escaped some of her schemes. I don't feel lucky, I admitted, sipping my coffee. I feel like I've been walking blind for 5 years, thinking I knew her. Rachel nodded knowingly. Most people don't see it until it's too late. She's charming when she wants you to follow her, cold when she wants control. I studied her, noticing the subtle caution in her tone. You trust me? I asked. I trust your intent, she said carefully. You want to survive this, and maybe she needs to face consequences. I can help you navigate her world. I felt a mix of relief and curiosity. What's her pattern? How does she operate? Rachel leaned in. She isolates people, makes them dependent on her decisions, then subtly undermines them when convenient. Her public image is flawless, but privately, she destabilizes those around her to maintain dominance. That includes colleagues, friends, even family. I felt a surge of anger. That explains so much. Every friend who seemed distant, every whisper I heard. Exactly, Rachel said. You're not imagining it. She has always been this way. You just didn't have the perspective yet. Nate called later that evening. So, you found your insider? He asked. Yes, I said. Rachel. She knows Victoria inside and out. We need to coordinate, but carefully. Every step has to be precise. Good, Nate replied. You're thinking strategically now? Don't let emotion dictate your moves. Victoria thrives on reactionary opponents. I ran my hands over my face. Emotion is hard to control when she's everywhere. I see her manipulating people even now. At social gatherings, at work. She's subtle, but you notice the effects if you pay attention. You need patience, Nate said. You've been reactive so far. That changes now. Rachel is your advantage, but timing is everything. The next day, I faced another wave of her tactics. Colleagues approached me with cautious smiles, thinly veiled concern. A reporter called asking about supposed conflicts between me and my associates. Victoria's influence was spreading quietly, a whisper that could damage my reputation if left unchecked. I clenched my jaw and thought aloud. I can't believe I trusted her blindly. I thought I was clever, aware, but I wasn't. Rachel's words returned to me. Isolate, undermine, control. I realized I had underestimated the depth of her strategy. But I also saw an opportunity. If I played carefully, if I anticipated her moves, I could counteract her influence. Later that evening, Rachel and I met to discuss next steps. We can't rush, she said. Every move has to be calculated. Victoria notices inconsistencies immediately. I understand, I said. I've made mistakes already. I need to learn from them. No impulsive actions. Rachel nodded. Good. And Caleb, remember, this is as much about protecting yourself as it is about revenge. Keep your allies close, and always consider the consequences. I felt a strange sense of connection forming with her. It wasn't romance, not yet, but trust. Someone who understood Victoria, who wasn't blinded by charm or fear, standing beside me. For the first time since the divorce, I felt a flicker of control. Nate called one last time before I went to bed. You're learning, Caleb. Focus. Observe. Align your resources. Victoria underestimates people who think several moves ahead. Use that. I poured whiskey into a glass and stared out at the city lights. Rachel's insight, Nate's strategy, my own determination, all combined into a fragile plan. I wasn't fully in control yet, but I was moving toward it. Victoria's influence was still strong, but I had allies, and I was no longer alone. I whispered to myself, "You think you can isolate me, Victoria? You were wrong. This time, I have backup. This time, I'm prepared for your games." The first step was taken. Allies were in place. The battle was no longer one-sided, and for the first time in months, I felt the tension of the war shift slightly in my favor. I never imagined betrayal could feel like a physical blow. I thought Victoria's divorce and cold offer had cut me deeply, but nothing compared to this. Nate, my friend, my confidant, the one person I trusted without question. You did what? I shouted the moment he arrived at my apartment. My voice shook, echoing off the empty walls. I had no choice, Caleb, Nate said, his eyes avoiding mine. You have to understand, it was about my family. I couldn't risk them. Your family, I snapped, pacing the room. So you sold me out? You chose her over me. Over everything we've been through. Nate ran a hand through his hair. I didn't sell you out. I made a hard choice to protect those I love. You know how dangerous she can be. You don't survive this by ignoring reality. I trusted you. I said, voice breaking. I let you in. I shared my plans, my anger, my fear, and you stabbed me in the back. I didn't stab you, Nate exclaimed, frustration in his voice. I advised you, Caleb. I warned you to be careful. You took risks. You wanted action. I just made sure my family was safe. That's all. Safe. I laughed bitterly. And what about me? What about loyalty? Friendship? You call this loyalty. It's not easy, he said quietly. You have to see it from my perspective. Victoria's influence is vast. I didn't want to get caught in the crossfire. You know what she's capable of. I survived because I was smart. I felt rage and disbelief clawing at my chest. Smart? You call betraying me smart? You didn't survive. You abandoned me. You left me to fight alone. I didn't want to, he admitted. You have to believe me. I hated this, Caleb. Every moment. But I have responsibilities, obligations. Sometimes survival isn't pretty. Sometimes it's messy. The words barely registered. My apartment felt suffocating, empty. Memories of past conversations, shared strategies, late-night talks, they all seemed like lies now. I sank onto the couch, running a hand over my face. I can't believe this, I muttered. First Victoria, now you. The people I trusted the most. I know, Nate said softly. I wish there was another way. I truly do. I stood abruptly. There's no way back, Nate. You made your choice. I have to make mine. He flinched. Caleb, don't do anything reckless. I didn't mean. I'm not talking about reckless. I interrupted. I'm talking about moving forward. Using this. Using the betrayal. You think this breaks me? It doesn't. It fuels me. Nate's face twisted in confusion and guilt. You're not angry enough to be smart. You're beyond it. I don't know what you'll do, but be careful. I left the apartment and walked through the city streets, numb. The betrayal was raw, but a part of me felt clarity forming in the chaos. Anger, yes, but also resolve. I refused to crumble. By the time I returned to our empty home, memories of Victoria and I haunted the rooms. The dining table where we laughed, the couch where we argued, the bedroom where silence once meant comfort, all were now reminders of everything lost. I whispered to the shadows, if betrayal was meant to destroy me, it failed. I will rise from this. I poured a drink and sat by the window, staring at the city lights. The world was indifferent, but my mind was sharpening. Nate had chosen his path, Victoria had chosen hers, and I had mine. I realized that anger could be destructive, but channeling it could be powerful. I thought about every decision, every plan I had made. Nate's betrayal was painful, but it revealed something crucial. I couldn't rely on anyone fully. Trust had to be earned, not assumed. Loyalty could be conditional. And most importantly, I had to depend on myself. I'll use this, I muttered, speaking to no one. I'll turn every betrayal into leverage, every loss into strength. Victoria and everyone else will see that I am not a man to be underestimated. The night stretched on, cold and silent, but inside, a fire had ignited. Betrayal had cut deeply, yes, but it also illuminated my path. I would no longer be blind, naive, or trusting. I would act decisively, plan meticulously, and strike when the time was right. And Nate, I didn't hate him entirely. He had acted from fear, from love for his family. I could understand that. But understanding didn't excuse the pain. It only sharpened my focus. I lifted my glass, whispering into the darkness. This is just the beginning. Betrayal only strengthens those who refuse to break. I will rise, and I will win. I finally felt a clarity I hadn't experienced in months. Rachel and Izzy had provided invaluable insight into Victoria's empire. Every detail, every pattern, every subtle manipulation became pieces of a puzzle I was ready to complete. Caleb, are you sure about this? Rachel asked as we reviewed the plan for the last time. Her hands hovered over the documents, hesitant but steady. I've double-checked everything, I replied. We have the leaks, the evidence of mismanaged funds, and her private maneuvers. It's all here. Now it's about timing. Timing is everything with her, Rachel said. She's arrogant. She never expects someone to anticipate her moves. That's why this could work. I nodded. She underestimated me once. She won't again. The first signs appeared in the media within days. Rumors about financial missteps and inconsistent statements began circulating. Victoria's carefully crafted image of competence and control started to wobble. You see that? I asked Rachel one evening, pointing at an article on my laptop. She's reacting, subtly at first, but she's scrambling. Rachel leaned closer. Yes, and noticed the tone. The language is cautious, almost fearful. That's new. That's cracks. I leaned back, sipping whiskey, feeling a strange satisfaction. I always knew she could be toppled. I just needed to be precise, not impulsive. That was the key. The following week, I began reclaiming control over assets we had once shared. Contracts, accounts, and negotiations that had been frozen during our divorce were now under my oversight. Each phone call, each meeting, built a sense of power I hadn't felt since before the betrayal. At a board meeting, Victoria confronted me in front of colleagues. Caleb, this isn't over, she said, her voice tight but still polished. I know, I replied calmly. It's over when you accept consequences, Victoria. Until then, I'm focused on moving forward, not retaliation. Her eyes narrowed. You think you've won? I think I've learned, I said steadily. And learning is far more valuable than winning in haste. After the meeting, Rachel whispered, You handled that perfectly. You're calm, assertive, and controlled. Victoria wasn't expecting that. I nodded. Control is everything. If I panic or act out of anger, she regains power. Staying composed gives me leverage. I reflected on how far I'd come. From heartbreak and betrayal to careful planning and execution, I had grown. I wasn't just reacting emotionally anymore. I was thinking strategically. Every decision was informed, every step deliberate. Victoria's arrogance became her weakness. A high-profile charity event turned awkward as subtle financial rumors surfaced among sponsors. Her allies whispered behind her back, and her confidence faltered. I observed it all with quiet satisfaction, knowing the tide had shifted. One evening, Rachel and I reviewed the latest developments. Caleb, you're not just fighting back. You're reshaping everything, she said. I never realized how much control I could regain until I lost it completely. I admitted. The betrayal, The divorce, it forced me to see clearly. I understand people, strategies, and motives in a way I didn't before. Rachel smiled faintly. You've changed. Stronger, wiser. Victoria underestimated that, and now she's facing the consequences. I leaned against the table, reflecting. I don't feel the need for vengeance anymore. This isn't about revenge. It's about restoring balance and reclaiming what I lost. Every move is calculated, not fueled by anger. Rachel nodded. That's the difference between reacting and winning. You're in control, Caleb. That's what she never anticipated. I stared at the city skyline from my office window. The lights twinkled, indifferent to the battles played out in boardrooms and media columns. And yet, I felt a personal triumph. I had been blindsided by betrayal, but I had risen stronger, smarter, and more self-assured. Later, I spoke quietly to myself, a hint of a smile forming. Victoria, this is your first defeat. I've learned, I've adapted, and I'm no longer vulnerable. The game has changed, and I'm finally in control. Rachel placed a hand on my shoulder. You've done well, Caleb. But remember, this is just one battle. Stay vigilant. I will, I said firmly. But for now, I can breathe, focus, and rebuild without fear. That's more than I've had in months. For the first time since the divorce, I felt the weight of despair lift. The turning point wasn't just external, it was internal. I had transformed from a man shattered by betrayal to someone capable of controlling his own fate, while Victoria faced the reality of her first real defeat. Victoria's empire, once untouchable, now trembled under the weight of her own arrogance. News outlets dissected her missteps, sponsors withdrew quietly, and whispers of doubt echoed louder than her carefully curated image. I watched from the sidelines, no longer a pawn, no longer consumed by blind rage. Caleb, it's happening, Rachel said as we reviewed the latest headlines. Her voice was calm, tinged with awe. The public is questioning her. Everything she built is unraveling. I know, I said, taking a slow sip of my coffee. It's strange. I expected satisfaction, but it feels quieter than I imagined. More like relief than triumph. Rachel smiled faintly. That's growth. You're no longer just reacting. You're observing, learning, evolving. I leaned back, thinking of the journey. The betrayal, the heartbreak, Nate's secret deal, and the countless sleepless nights plotting. Every moment had pushed me to become stronger, wiser. I realized wealth alone had never healed me. Only clarity, patience, and self-respect had allowed me to reclaim control. I have to admit, I said quietly, watching her finally face consequences is satisfying, but it's different now. I don't feel the need to humiliate her. Karma is enough. Rachel nodded. Exactly. She's experiencing it fully, without you having to act out of anger. That's real power, Caleb. Not revenge, but justice through wisdom. I thought of Victoria. Cold, manipulative, and brilliant, but flawed in her pride. I could see now that no matter how much she controlled, arrogance always leaves cracks. I whispered to myself, she never expected anyone to endure, adapt, and rise. And she underestimated me. That evening, I returned to the apartment that had once felt so empty. Every corner held memories of pain and growth. I spoke aloud, as if acknowledging both the past and future. This is it. The end of one chapter, the start of another. Rachel's voice echoed from the hallway. Caleb, do you ever think about forgiveness? I turned to her. Some people, yes. But others I've learned it's healthier to sever ties. Let the toxic ones fade. Keep those who uplift, guide, and support. She stepped closer. And Victoria? I paused. She's facing the consequences she created. I don't need to add to it. I've had my closure through understanding, not cruelty. Let her learn what pride and manipulation cost her. Rachel nodded approvingly. You've changed. Stronger, more patient. You've taken control of your life without letting anger dictate your actions. I smiled faintly, thinking of the man I had been. Naive, trusting, blinded by love and ambition. That Caleb no longer existed. The man I was now was calm, strategic, and resilient, shaped by lessons only hardship could teach. Later, I reviewed my own life, considering the future. I'll rebuild relationships carefully, I murmured. I'll protect my peace, nurture loyalty, and remain alert. But I won't live in fear or resentment anymore. That chapter is closed. Rachel placed a hand on my shoulder. You're ready, Caleb. Ready to start anew. I nodded, looking out at the city skyline. The lights shimmered like tiny reminders of countless possibilities. I felt a flicker of hope, quiet but steady. Wealth had opened doors, but wisdom, resilience, and emotional clarity had built the foundation of my life. I spoke to the empty apartment, almost to myself. The pain shaped me, betrayal taught me, and every mistake strengthened me. I've learned what matters: respect, integrity, and the ability to rise no matter the circumstances. The next morning, I received a message from Victoria. I see now what I underestimated. You've changed. Congratulations. I stared at it, a calm smile forming. I didn't reply. No words were needed. Karma had done its work, and I had found closure without losing my dignity. Rachel walked beside me as we left for a meeting. Ready for the next step? She asked. Absolutely, I said, feeling the weight of the past lift. It's time to move forward, focus on growth, and surround myself with those who matter. We walked through the city, the air crisp with possibility. I felt resilient, in control, and at peace. The storm Victoria had created had passed, leaving clarity in its wake. I had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and manipulation, and I had survived, stronger than ever. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe without fear or regret. The past remained, but it no longer dictated me. I had learned the ultimate lesson. Wealth can't heal wounds, but wisdom, self-respect, and patience can create a life worth living. And as Victoria faced the consequences of her actions, I realized the final victory wasn't in her humiliation. It was in my evolution, my strength, and my ability to start anew.